BXB. It's in the game!
The word world instantly evokes the feelings of scale, particularly when attached to the title of a game. For Train Sim World, however, the assumption couldn't be further from the truth, and its failure to live up to the promise of its title really summarises the game. As a simulation, things start off promising. A handful of tutorials introduce you to the game's 3 different trains, and yes, I did just say 3, providing you with a step-by-step guide on how to start the engine, test the brakes, and get everything in position to depart. Once you get the train moving, however, other than obeying the speed limit, there really isn't anything else to do until you need to stop. As such, with plenty of downtime, you can begin to have a play with some of the other features of the train. For example, the wipers or the horn, but they won't keep you busy for long. As such, with around 20 minutes to kill until your next destination, you'll then move on to taking some time to appreciate the, in quotes, scenic journey between London's Paddington station and Reading. To assist with this, the game offers a selection of internal and external views to cycle through and play about with, but again, with little to look at other than the overhead lines, miles of track, and some generally low quality geometry adorning the side of the track, you'll soon find yourself struggling to find something to do. And this somewhat short explanation pretty much sums up the game. As mentioned before, the game's generous range of 3 different modern locomotives vary only really in their startup procedure and top speed, and even then, you only really have around 45 miles of track to actually drive them along. A sandbox play mode allows you to select a specific timetable train to drive, and scenarios test your resolve in various real situations. A particular highlight requiring you to ride as a passenger for 20 minutes on your way to cover for another driver who is running late. Content-wise, there is little variety on offer, and what you do get plays out over the same environment, often only varying by the number of stops you make or the total distance you travel. To put it into context somewhat, one of the game's achievements requires you to travel a total of 1,600 or so miles in one specific engine, which would roughly require you to drive up and down the same 45-mile stretch of track roughly 40 times. Thanks, but I think I'll pass. On the performance front, the game continues to disappoint. Graphical artifacts, glitches, and lighting issues are present across both the Xbox One and Xbox One X, with the latter offering only a slightly improved experience. Frame rates are inconsistent, never feeling more than reasonable, but often dropping to a stutter, and the level of detail quickly fades, notably on the standard Xbox. Overall, a real lack of optimization results in a game that seldom looks anything better than last generation. Considering the minimal animation and simple geometry, the final output is substandard, and with so little else to do for the proportion of the game, the lack of jaw-dropping visuals is just another nail in the coffin. Perhaps, as a simulation, this represents the most realistic depiction of what it is to be a modern train driver, but if that is the case, then it serves only to prove how realism doesn't translate into an enjoyable game. That's not to say that a simulation about trains can't be fun, but more that specifically Train Sim World just isn't a fun simulation. If I were to wax lyrical about trains, then the conversation would focus around great scenic tracks that carve through mountains and coastlines, alongside a selection of famous trains, both modern and old, that gently puff and chug along these majestic tracks. Driving the 7:15 a.m. Paddington to Reading service sadly doesn't come close to that fantasy, and although I'm sure it's a faithful recreation of one of the UK's busier commuter routes, it just doesn't capture the essence of a great train journey. To conclude, Train Sim World lacks content and polish. The simulation aspect feels right in places, but wrong in others. Overall, there isn't enough to occupy you during the long interludes between interactions, and coupled with the game's limited range of locomotives and locations, I can't see this appealing to either the die-hards or the casuals. I'm Joel Summerfield, reviewing on behalf of BXB Games. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, then please do hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to head over to the site at www.bxbgames.co.uk for more reviews, features, news, etc. Thanks for watching.
BXB. It's in the game!